Hello, friends, and welcome to episode number 29 of Nostalgia Talk. That's one show away from the big 3-0, which is coming up. I won't say anything about it just yet. But before I do get into this one, I just have a few birthday shout-outs I'd like to give, like always. First of all, happy birthday to the last guest I had on Nostalgia Talk, Gord Robertson, otherwise known as Zaboomafoo. He came on, as many of you guys know, he came on here a couple of weeks ago, and we did a little cover of the Zaboomafoo theme song, and people are clearly still loving that. So happy birthday to Gord, and also to David Matthew Feldman, who was a puppeteer on Lazy Town and came on here when I did the Lazy Town reunion not too long ago. And again, one of the happiest moments of my life. So happy birthday to Gord and to David as well. And David also puppeteered on the show Between the Lions, which brings me into my guest, Norman Stiles. Welcome, Norm.
Hello. I worked on Lazy Town too.
Oh, really?
In the beginning.
Wow. Yeah,
I worked with what's his name? The guy who started the whole thing.
Magnus.
Magnus, yeah, it was quite a character. Have you ever talked to him?
No, he didn't come on when I did the reunion. I had Chloe Lang, who played Stephanie in the last two seasons, Jodie Eichelberger, who played Stingy, Amy Garcia, who was Trixie, and David, of course, and also Julie Westwood, who's out in England.
Yeah.
That was a lot of fun.
I'll bet. Yeah.
I'm still getting messages from fans now saying thank you for doing that.
Oh, really? That's interesting. Yeah, I was worked on that with a bunch of people, and but I almost worked on the show, but it didn't work out with my schedule and things. So.
Okay. And aside from that, Norman also was what you call the head writer for Sesame Street for about 20 years, meaning that he was basically in charge of a lot of the creative stuff that went into Sesame Street. I always used to think that the head writer was just the one who wrote everything, but I've interviewed multiple other Sesame Street writers. Emily Pearl Kingsley was on here. Yeah, I chatted with her recently. Chris Cerf, of course, was on here. Ed Valentine, who is a writer in recent years. So among some of Norman's contributions to the show include segments. He created the characters of The Count, Forgetful Jones, Harvey Kneeslapper. Are there any others that you created that you feel should be on that list?
Not that I can think of at the moment. There, and also what I can't think of at the moment are those that didn't work.
Well, maybe we'll have more to say about those as we speak more. And for episodes, he wrote, let's see, there was an episode where Maria was sleeping. No, I'm sorry, other way around. Elmo was sleeping over at Maria's. That was one of my very favorite episodes.
Oh, I don't remember that one.
Let's just say, basically, Elmo had woken Maria up at 5 o'clock in the morning to tell her about a dream that he had, and she's like, I don't have to be up for another 2 hours. Well, it's 2 hours enough time to make pancakes? Whatever, fine. Maria didn't care. Let's just say that Elmo was a little bit less of an annoying house guest than Dina was.
Dina, that's a character I didn't like. That's what I created.
There was one episode where Dina was sleeping over at Maria's as well.
Oh,
What are some other episodes? The one where Big Bird had finally gotten the adults to believe that Snuffy had existed. He wrote the episode where Big Bird was going to camp. He wrote the episode where Maria announced her pregnancy. And of course, one of the most famous ones is where Big Bird is told by the adults that Mr. Hooper had passed away. And that is one of the biggest contributions to Sesame Street that he has done. And he also has written songs for the show, including, and I have a list of them on my phone. I had to go through quite a lot of them to make sure I knew which ones to put in.
Well, before you mention them, usually the way this would happen is I would get an idea for a song. And I might write down some lyrics. A few times I'd write down the whole lyric, but more often than not, it was, the hook or something like it. And then I'd go to Chris and we'd have a meeting and we'd talk more about it. And he would finish the lyric and write the music.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Well, majority of the songs on this list were co-written by you and Chris. Among the songs that you guys had written included Handful of Crumbs, Doo-Wop Hop, Do the Rubber Duck, Me Gotta Be Blue, Hey Food, Honker Ducky Dinger Jamboree, Monster in the Mirror, Exit, Telephone Rock, You're Alive, Dance Myself to Sleep, It's Hip to Be a Square. That one wasn't written by Chris, but it's on the list here. Put Down the Ducky, Birdland Jump, Wake Up, Google Bugle, Above It All, and Where Can You Be, which was sung by one of my closest friends and another past guest on this podcast, Ivy Austin.
Oh, Ivy. Oh, yeah. Yeah, her dad worked on the show. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Ivy and I are very close.
Are you really?
Oh, yeah. She came on here in December, and I thought to myself, oh, my God, this is one of the loveliest people I have ever met.
Yeah, she's great. You should have known her dad. Her dad was the greatest.
Yeah, she when I was interviewing her, just the whole time thinking, can I just give you a hug? I know that I'm in another country, but still. Oh yeah, she's sweet. And alongside of Chris, Norman co-created the TV series Between the Lions, which I used to watch when I was a kid and kind of have been rewatch, as many of you regular listeners know, because I've been talking about it with past guests, have kind of been rewatching the show a lot lately. When I got Chris to come on here, I knew we had to bring up Between the Lions at some point, so I just went back and rewatched it. The theme song plays, and it just has that very soft kind of jazzy sound. The computer mouse comes by, and then all the graphics, the way that the words change from hey wow to hey now, it was starting to look familiar. And then it gets in that really upbeat gospel sound, and I had this humongous ugly cry. Thank God nobody else saw it.
Oh yeah, Sarah Durkee and her husband Paul Jacob wrote that, and it was actually meant to be sort of African. They had a kind of African feel to it in some of the way it was arranged, sort of like Ladysmith. I mean, that was sort of in her head because of the lions and all that sort of stuff. So it was supposed to have that kind of feel to it.
I never thought of that. Wow, that's interesting. Yeah. Well, I'll send this to Sarah. Sarah and I have kind of conversed recently.
Oh, good. Yeah.
So before I begin the interview, another little thing I want to say. A big thank you to everyone who came to Nostalgia Talk Disney Trivia Night over Facebook and YouTube Live on Thursday night. That was a lot of fun. I'm getting better now with the live streaming stuff, so that's a start, because the first one I felt like it was kind of crappy. Thank God I'm now able to read comments that are live. I wasn't able to do that before. Now I'm able to do that. And let me know if you want to see more Nostalgia Talk trivias, because I do want to do more of them. And now I am going to shut up and get right into the interview. I've been rambling for too long. So, Norman, what did you aspire to want to become?
At what point in my life are you talking about?
Like what were some of your first interests?
My first interests? Oh, yeah. I was kind of lost, I have to say. Okay. I didn't know. I was shorter than everybody else my age. I was thinner than everybody else my age. I weighed 110 pounds when I went into college, and that was my height.
Oh.
So I was not really, I had personal issues. And I thought that, well, maybe I'll be a doctor, because that's what Jewish kids are supposed to do. And then I realized I really wasn't doing that well in the science courses, and that maybe that was too much to take on, being a doctor. So I thought, well, maybe it'll be easier being a dentist. So I thought, well, okay. So I majored in zoology and minored in chemistry. And I got a C average in my major and a D average in my minor. And the chances of going to dental school were pretty slim.
Then maybe I should have introduced you there as Dr. Norman Stiles.
Well, actually, I do have an honorary degree.
Oh, okay. Well, Dr. Norman Stiles, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And so when I got out of school, I had no clue what I was going to do. And I got a job working in the welfare department in New York City as a caseworker. And because I needed a job, and it was during the beginnings of the war on poverty and things, and well, okay, I'll try that and see what happens, and at least I'll make some money. And while I was working there, a friend of mine introduced me to somebody who was writing jokes for comedians at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And my friend introduced me to this guy, and that's how I got started, in quotes, I have to say quotes, writing, because we were just writing jokes.
Mm-hmm.
And eventually I got a full-time job working on the Merv Griffin show, which was on at 11:30 opposite Carson for about a year or two.
Mm-hmm.
And that ended, and I was watching TV, and I saw Sesame Street, and I saw that it had writers, and I needed a job. So I called them up, and I spoke to Jeff Moss, who was the head writer at the time.
Cool.
And he was very nice. He said, okay, well, watch the show and write some segments, and we'll see.
Mm-hmm.
So I did. I wrote 3 segments, Muppet segments,
Mm-hmm.
and he responded. He said, oh, these are really very good. There is better than what I wrote in the beginning.
Wow.
Oh, wow. Thank you very much. He said, write some more. So I wrote another 3. He said, these are terrible.
He said that?
Yeah. And then he said, okay, well, let's talk about the other first 3, and you'll rewrite them a little bit. And so I did. And he called me up and he said, well, these are really good, but we have been having an internship program here, and we're trying to bring in some minority writers and things like that, or in various departments. They've been working in production and, various parts of the company. And there's one of these folks who wants to be a writer. She's Black and a woman. I said, well, okay, bye.
Ooh.
I said, I guess that, she'll get the job. And he said, well, no, what we're going to do is we're going to put you on a month's audition, both of you. We'll pay you. You'll write a script a week. And at the end of the 4 weeks, we'll decide who's best. So I did that for 4 weeks writing.
Mm-hmm.
And this woman's name was Tippy Fortune was her name.
Oh, I've heard that name before.
Yes, she's worked on, well, she ended up working on lots of things in the workshop. Mm-hmm. But after the 4 weeks, I got a call. And Jeff said, could you come into the office on whatever date it was at 10 o'clock? I said, sure. And he said nothing else. I had no idea whether I got the job or I didn't get the job, what the meeting was about. And when I got there, he had a very small little office, and the other writers were there. Writers that you may not know, it was Ray Seifert and Bob
that's how you pronounce his name? I thought it was Sippard.
No, Seifert.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, right. Bob Oxner and Dan Wilcox and Emily, I think, and maybe that was it. And so I'm there, and Jeff started talking about the new season coming up, the writing season, what we were going to be talking about, whatever. The meeting was over, and everybody left, and I stayed behind. And I said, Jeff, do I have the job? He said, do you see Tippy?
Good answer. Let me answer your question with another question.
So that's how I got the job. I actually when I was a kid and a teenager, I was one of the funny guys in the group, and but it was more a defense mechanism than anything I thought I would end up doing. I was just trying to be funny so I didn't get beat up.
It's always a good way to be then.
Yeah, right. So I don't know if that answers your question, but
No, that's perfect. I was going to ask you, how did you get involved with Sesame Street? There's
all right. So
there's another Jeff Moss story.
Yeah, right.
I've heard a few stories about Jeff Moss here and there, and I always love hearing about them because I feel like he was a genius, really.
Jeff was a genius, and there's a new documentary out.
Right. I haven't seen it yet.
It's really well done. It really will give you a feeling of what it was like at the beginning, and for the next 30 years or so. But documentaries can't include everybody,
right?
And they make decisions about who to include in order to tell the story that they want to tell. And Jeff is not mentioned.
Yeah, Emily Pearl Kingsley was saying that she was a little bit disappointed by that.
Yes, Jeff wasn't mentioned, and also there's somebody else who wasn't mentioned, without whom there would be no Sesame Street. I can guarantee, as it exists now.
Oh, who was it?
His name is Jerry Lesser. He developed the curriculum, as we call it, or what it really was called was the Statement of Instructional Goals. And in order to be able to write a segment on the show, it's sort of like a commercial. If you're going to do a commercial, doesn't matter what it is, it's a soap, let's say. Well, the person who is the client wants the audience to remember certain things about their product. And they're usually very simple. Well, they want you to remember the name. They want you to remember what it can do. If it's new, what's new about it. There are little things that they want you to remember. And so they write a commercial, some of them funny, that are trying to embed that information in some kind of a narrative that's funny. Hopefully that you'll remember that. So what Jerry was able to do was boil down many different areas of intellectual needs, social needs of children into an outline form. So let's just say letters. Well, there's lots of things about letters that you might want kids to know.
Right.
Just getting into school. You want them to know what the letter A looks like. Just what it looks like. You might want them to know what the sound of the letter A is. You might, so they're different things. So he would break that down, outline form in, and it would be always phrased this way. After watching the segment, the child will know that this is the shape of the letter A, and so there were these little things. And that's what we wrote each segment about, one of these little things in all the various areas of cognitive development and social development that were outlined in this statement of instructional goals. So it wasn't as if the writers made up their own minds on what to teach. It was given to us, and without it, you wouldn't have had a song like Hey Food. Because there was a goal about food that we wrote about. You wouldn't have had even Put Down the Duckie.
One of the classics.
Embedded in that was, He's got a duck in one hand, and he's trying to play the saxophone, and he's getting this silly squeak. Well, you're getting the
reason for that.
You have to put down the ducky. So on its most basic level, it was a problem-solving lesson, but it, like a lot of things, it has deeper meaning. Anyway, Jerry Lesser created that curriculum in that form. Nothing like it had ever been created before. And if that hadn't been created exactly that way, I don't think we could have written the show.
Well said.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't yet seen the documentary Street Gang. I tried to, my whole family actually, we tried to get into it at Sundance, but it wasn't available to Canadians. Even Emilio Delgado tried to help, but same result.
Well, you can watch it now. It's streaming now on all sorts of platforms, but it'll cost you. If you wait, you can get it free.
Yeah, I'll probably wait because we're in lockdown now and the theaters are closed.
Well, you can watch it online.
Oh, okay. I'll have to look for where to find it.
It's on Amazon Prime. It's on Hulu.
Oh, it's on Amazon Prime. Okay, I'll check there. We have an account, so.
Yeah. I mean, it costs $19.99 to rent it, but whatever.
Oh, that's not that bad. That's not what I thought. I thought it was going to be more.
Oh, yeah. But if you wait a while, you can get it for free. So,
So, I understand that one of the actually, before I get into this, you said you wrote for Merv Griffin. What was Merv Griffin like? And for anyone who doesn't know who Merv Griffin he was a television presenter.
He was he had a talk show during the daytime, and it was very popular. By the way, he also created Jeopardy.
Oh, really? That I didn't know. And I love watching Jeopardy.
Yeah, he created that show, and I believe Wheel of Fortune.
Nice.
He's not alive right now, but he did create those. He was a great guy. He had an interesting career. He built hotels and all that sort of stuff. And it was my first job.
Wow.
Yeah.
Sounds like Merv Griffin was a pretty amazing guy.
Yeah, he was. He was a good guy. Yeah.
Cool. So I understand that one of the very first pieces that you wrote for Sesame Street was one that involved Bert and Ernie, and looks like I pulled out the perfect shirt. And actually, that first particular piece was actually the first thing for Sesame Street that I ever watched when I was a kid, and it was the Cookies in Bed one.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I remember that was one of the first times I ever watched Sesame Street, and I still remember Bert saying, Ernie, why are you eating cookies in bed? Because I'm hungry. Well, don't do it. It took a couple of years later. I found it on YouTube.
Let me just tell you what that taught.
Okay.
Consequent events.
Mm-hmm.
There's a thing that you want kids to be able to predict what's going to happen next.
Mm-hmm.
And if you remember what Bert says is, Ernie says to him, why shouldn't I eat cookies in bed? He says, because if you eat cookies in bed, you'll get crumbs in your pajamas.
And it'll make you itch.
And if you get crumbs in your pajamas, it'll make you itch. Consequent events. Mm-hmm. Anyway, I wouldn't have written it if it hadn't been for consequent events.
It's the funniest part of that is the very end. Ernie, what are you doing? I'm going to eat cookies in your bed. Yeah, well, you never said anything about not eating cookies in Bert's bed, so
right.
that's safe as far as we're concerned. Were there any times when you would be watching Jim and Frank performing not just Bert and Ernie, but in any skit, and you would just be dying laughing from their ad lib?
Always. Whenever they worked, it was usually between takes, or if they made mistakes. You'll see some of that in the documentary. There's lots of behind-the-scene footage in there, and you see them cracking up. They were so when they put those puppets on, they became those puppets, and so and they would say things that as the puppets to each other between takes.
As I've been watching a lot of segments with Jim Henson and Frank Oz on YouTube, I can often tell now what's being ad-libbed.
Well, it's interesting. You'd have to say to me, I think this was ad-libbed. You tell me, and I'll tell you whether it was.
Okay, let's see. There was one skit with Bert and Ernie where Ernie had this quote-unquote magic chain that he would turn into shapes, and he would shape.
That I don't remember. I can't give you that one.
Okay. There was one where I recently did a YouTube. Have you ever seen the video "The Best of Ernie and Bert"?
No.
Okay, I have a copy of it, and I recently did a video. I call it a nostalgia talk bonus, which means I do it in many different ways. For this one, I talked about that video, and I said, well, come on, there are so many other classic Bert and Ernie moments that could have been on that video, but weren't. Like it didn't have Rubber Ducky, it didn't have Doing the Pigeon, it didn't have Put Down the Ducky. It came out after Put Down the Ducky, just a few years after. So you would have thought they would have put it in there.
Yeah, right.
But no, they left it out. And there were a lot of other moments.
Who produced it? The Workshop?
What do you mean? Like,
was it produced by the Children's Television Workshop?
Yes, it was.
Ah.
So I did a video where I talked about some of my favorite Best of Ernie and Bert moments. Actually, the first one I talked about, I believe you wrote as well. It was Bert was saying to Ernie, can you prepare a shopping list of some of the things that we need while I go and get ready? And
I don't remember it.
And Ernie's preparing the shopping list, but he needs something to write with. He's like, okay. And he's ransacking the whole house. He's like, okay, pencils? No pencils here. Pens? No, maybe crayon. Hello, have you seen a crayon? No, nothing. Okay. That I feel was ad-libbed, him picking up the phone. Hello, have you seen a crayon? And so he pulls out a paintbrush and he's like, okay, the paintbrush. Now I just need something to dip the paintbrush in. So he leaves the room. Bert comes back, and so he shows him the shopping list, and on it, pencils, pens, markers, crayons, typewriter, chocolate pudding. Because I used the last of the chocolate pudding to write the shopping list. And Bert
I don't remember it, but it could be me. I don't know.
And Bert looks at the camera and he says, well, he's improving. Last time he used spaghetti sauce. I'll be honest though, it's really difficult to write with a paintbrush. I've tried. There was one skit with that featured Ernie more prominently than it featured Bert. You can Bert just has one line in the background, but it's one I talked about in the video. Ernie was spending the night alone while Bert was away. Wakes up thirsty, and he's like, well, what should I do? I always tell Bert when I'm thirsty. Oh, wait, you know what? I can tell Bert. I'll call him on the telephone, actually phones him. And so goes to get a drink of water, which he should have done in the first place, because that's really what a normal person does when they're thirsty.
Right.
And then he can't sleep. So calls Bert again. Count sheep and don't call me anymore tonight. Do you have any idea what time it is? Well, no, Bert, I have no idea what time it is. So he's got the phone in his hand, lays in bed. What's that, Bert? No, I didn't forget to hang up the phone. 2 sheep. What do you mean, why you, Bert?
Yeah.
The classic comedy duo of Jim Henson and Frank Oz. Is there any other better comedy duo? Let's be honest.
Well, I think they're as good as any that have been out there.
Well said.
There are, what I would have loved to see them do now. One of the problems with the library that was created of all these videos is that it's not in high def.
Oh.
So whenever high def came in, up to that point, all of that stuff doesn't make it onto the show anymore. Well, the show's changed, so it wouldn't make it anyway. But even so, one of the ideas that Joan had and John Stone and all of those folks was that there was this library of stuff that could live forever.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it can sort of now, but not in the way they had hoped, because it's not in high def.
Oh.
So what I would have loved to see them do is redo them all in high def.
So among one of your biggest contributions to Sesame Street, as I mentioned in the intro, is creating the character of the Count. Another first for me from when I was watching the show. The Count was another one of the first characters I had seen. I think it was a skit where he was directing a movie with Liam Neeson in it, and Liam Neeson was playing the Count, and he had to really nail the and ever since I saw that back in 1999, I'd been practicing the laugh.
Oh, that was after I left.
Right. So I had heard you say before that, and I actually do, I find this story hilarious, that you had written the first script for the Count and then gave it to the head writer, which was Jeff Moss, and he left a note on it. Great character, horrible script.
No, that's what John Stone said to him.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and you had said that skit had something to do with hot dogs.
I think so. I don't remember exactly what it was.
Okay. There was one bit just after the Count had been introduced where he was a customer at Grover's restaurant was ordering hot dogs and
oh, really? I don't remember
wait there, please bring me another hot dog. All right. And he was counting the hot dogs and the thunder and lightning, and it's like, what was that? Just a little thunder and lightning. Oh, Charlie, this is your restaurant. And so after 3 hot dogs, the Count says, bring me another hot dog. But you haven't eaten the other 3. I'm not going to eat them. I am going to count them. Well, I'm not going to bring you another hot dog. So he hypnotizes him into bringing more hot dogs through this fast.
I don't remember that bit. Wow.
It was through this fast footage of Grover with his mouth dropped like a zombie going in and out of the kitchen. And at the end, he collapses.
I have no memory of that bit. Wow. You know, I was thinking, you know, when you said he collapses, in the early days, a lot of times, if you'll notice in Ernie and Bert bits and other bits, at the end of a bit, somebody faints.
I always used to find that funny as a kid. So for characters like the Count and Forgetful Jones, obviously those were curricular. Like the Count was meant to teach counting. My father was young when the Count, well, both my parents were young when the Count was introduced. And actually my dad, when he was younger, had a Count puppet, a rubber Count puppet, that might actually be at my step-grandfather's house. I think my grandmother passed away a couple of months ago, and they're trying to get rid of a bunch of stuff. And so I'm trying to find out if they still have that.
Yeah.
So yeah, my dad always described the Count as a horror movie that you could watch. Some of those early Count segments, like the one I was talking about with him hypnotizing Grover into giving him hot dogs, kind of made him seem like a demon. And
yes, yeah, he used to be able to do things. I think he would go like this, and it would make somebody kind of woozy.
I remember that. That was in the first skit.
I didn't have that initially in my thing, but they added that. But it did. We actually got some mail from somebody that said the Count is an agent of the devil.
It's a bit much.
Yeah.
And of course, for Forgetful Jones, that was a way of teaching the process of how to remember stuff, like step by step. Okay, let's go backwards a little bit much. And you also created the character Harvey Kneeslapper, and of course,
that was the first character I ever created.
And before we started recording, we were talking a little bit about another early classic Muppet, the Amazing Mumford.
Yes.
What were the curricular goals of those characters? Like, what were they created to teach?
They didn't have any.
Okay.
It was just, we thought it'd be a funny character, and was Amazing Mumford. What was the other one you said?
Harvey Kneeslapper.
Harvey Kneeslapper. That was the first character I came up with. And it was just to be funny, and it was a way to do basically puns that you're not supposed to be able to do with kids that age.
Oh.
Because they don't understand puns. But because it was physical, so do you know where I want to be? No, where do you want to be?
I want to be right here. Boing!
So I remember when we first shot that, I was just starting out, and to actually see a character that I created being done by Frank Oz, but Frank couldn't continue to do it because it hurt his voice.
That's what I had heard. That
Yeah,
because he was such a loud character. Like every time
yeah,
he completed his pun, he would
the
go
laugh.
"Ah!"
Yeah,
like so maniacally.
I never told him to do that.
Really?
I just told him to laugh.
Well, he really took it to the extreme there then. There actually is another good friend of mine besides Ivy Austin and Chris Cerf is Joe Matthew.
Oh, Joe. Oh, I love Joe.
Oh, I'll send this to him as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, I actually told Joe that that you were coming on the show, and he's like, "Oh,
Oh,
I've known him forever."
yeah. How do you know Joe? Just through your contact with Sesame Street and the books and everything?
Yeah, I sent him an email, and he actually was a guest on this podcast recently in
Oh.
December.
Mm-hmm.
And he told me a story about a character from Sesame Street who's kind of been long forgotten about.
Mm-hmm.
But he told me that the first time he ever went to visit the set of the show back in the 70s, I'm sorry if I'm making anyone out there feel old. It was when it was an episode featuring Big Bird where he was blackmailed by this character named Bad Barney into stealing something from Mr. McIntosh's fruit cart. And I recently found an episode that had the same character and the same plot. And I think you wrote the episode, but it was with Telly in Big Bird's place. Did you create Bad Barney?
No, that was Dan Wilcox.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I remember we talked about it. This was before I was head writer, I think. And we used to sometimes, you're struggling to come up with ideas. It's good to have somebody to work with. And so Dan and I would get together once in a while. And he wanted to do something because we didn't have any villain types.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the first piece he wrote was something on the beach with Ernie and Bert.
Tough Eddie.
That was Tough Eddie. Oh, okay. Then maybe Bad Barney wasn't Dan.
Well, Bad
Jeez,
Barney.
I don't remember.
Bad Barney appeared more often in street stories. Like the only one I saw was the one with Telly, but I was telling Joe Matthew about the one with Big Bird after I found evidence of its existence, let's say.
Right.
And but basically he was like this juvenile. He was like Tough Eddie. Tough Eddie was Jerry's character, and Richard was Bad Barney.
Mm-hmm.
And there was one episode, Big Bird had noticed that the initials BB were all over Sesame Street. Somebody vandalized it, and he's like, I could get blamed. Who's doing this? And it turned out to be Bad Barney, and it's like, I'm going to tell everyone. Bad Barney's like, no, you're not. And threatens, I haven't seen it yet, but threatens physical violence on Big Bird if he does anything about it.
Wow.
And like Big Bird presumed, he gets blamed for it, and he's like, wasn't me, and trying hard not to say anything. And finally, he tells Bad Barney off, and he says to him, don't come back unless you're good, Barney. And in the next episode, which was the blackmailing, basically it's like, I'll tell Mr. McIntosh that you took this unless you do my chores for me.
Oh, wow.
And eventually, Gordon, I think this was Roscoe's first year as Gordon. And
well, then I was there then,
okay.
But I wasn't head writer.
Okay. And Gordon and Mr. McIntosh saw that Big Bird was kind of down, and he explained what happened. And then Bad Barney comes around, sees Gordon and Mr. McIntosh, and notices he's screwed.
Oh,
what a horrible bully.
Yeah. The guy who played Chet, who played Bad Barney, who played Mr. McIntosh, and his twin brother were floor managers,
right,
on the show. And they had lived in show business in the 20s.
Mm-hmm.
They were connected to Broadway and all that sort of stuff. And they would tell stories about a time when people used to get dressed up in tuxedos to go out to eat.
Really?
Oh, they were song and dance men. They did the soft shoe and all that sort of stuff. They were twins. It was great to have them around.
Oh, I didn't know that they were twins.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah, yeah.
Since we mentioned Joe Matthew and Big Bird, I did some digging getting ready for this, and I
Mhm.
found a book that I have that you wrote and that he illustrated.
Oh yes, yeah,
And I
yeah.
know that none of the listeners can see it, but it's I'll Miss You, Mr. Hooper. And that
Mhm.
was based on one of the most popular Sesame Street episodes ever. If you're my age, you will have no idea what I'm talking about. But in the early years of Sesame Street, the store, Hooper's Store, hence its name, was run by a man named Mr. Hooper. And I think after season 14, Will Lee, who played Mr. Hooper, passed away. So they did a whole episode. Norman wrote a whole episode where the adults explained to Big Bird, Mr. Hooper died. And it was very, very well done. Like, I often tell my friends that they did this, and they're like, well, that's kind of dark.
Mhm.
Wouldn't that be a really controversial topic now? And I kind of understand what they're saying, but at the same time, a kid, no matter how old they are, because I was just explaining that my grandmother just recently passed away, no matter how old somebody is, they're still, even if they're 3, they're still going to have to hear that somebody in their life died. Do you think that Sesame Street would be able to do an episode like that now?
Yeah,
Okay.
I think they could. Sure. Um, um, they've tackled recently some very tough issues. Uh, they might not. It's conceived. One of the things that they're doing now that I think is wonderful is they're tackling some of the hard subjects in separate videos that are
Right.
not on the broadcast show.
Mm-hmm.
When you put something on the broadcast show, your uh, audience is very broad. You don't know who's going to be watching with the kid.
Mm-hmm.
The kid's going to be watching alone. You don't have the same kind of control that you might have if you just have a video that parents could access and watch with their kids.
Mm-hmm.
So with the show with Mr. Hooper, we needed to put out a lot of publicity to try to make sure parents were watching this with their kids, because we didn't want kids to be watching it alone.
Mm.
It aired on Thanksgiving.
I was just gonna say that's very clever to
uh,
air it when you know that there's gonna
and
be a lot of
intentional.
parents.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a
Um,
great idea.
but the when you say no matter what age you're going to deal with death, one of the things that we did then, and I'm sure they're doing it now, whatever we put on the show to teach, we focused on what do the kids need to know at the particular age. And age appropriate developmental readiness for certain topics is important. So if we're dealing with 3 to 5-year-olds, you need experts to tell you what is the emotional readiness for various subject matter, and what is it that they really need to know at that age. They're not going to process it the same way somebody much older or an adult would process death. So it's hard to sometimes you see a little kid in that kind of circumstance. Uh, it's very self-centered. It's all
Mm-hmm.
about who's going to take care of them and that kind of thing. The kind of emotional depth of the loss doesn't hit them the same way. We various people explain death in religious terms, and there's lots of different religious ways to talk about death. But from our point of view, from a developmental point of view, from the bare facts of it all,
Mm-hmm.
we didn't need to get into a religious explanation. So there were just a few basic things that we wanted to, or that it was the people who know kids, the professionals. They need to know that when somebody's dead, they don't come back, right? They need to know that their needs will be taken care of. If this person, whoever this person was to them, whatever this person provided to them, somebody else will take over and they'll be taken care of. And that whatever you're feeling is okay. Though that was it. It didn't need to be anything more. So if anybody looks at the scene or looks at the script, I just followed that. Having Big Bird say things that would provoke responses that would give him the information that we wanted the kids at home to get. So when he said, I'll give it, don't you remember we told you that Mr. Hooper died? And he said, oh yeah, I remember now. I'll give it to him when he gets back. And what it was very difficult for the actors. They were talking about a real person. That whole scene, the emotions were real because they were talking about a real person.
I heard it was shot in one take.
One take.
Yeah. Wow. And
yeah,
boy.
So I'll give it to him when he's not coming back ever. No, never. It's the basic facts from. I think what was so compelling about it, in hindsight, was that it was the simplicity of the answers, of the basic facts about death.
For episodes like that and that also handled other bigger things, like for example, the Snuffy revealed episode and Maria and Luis first falling in love and Maria announcing her pregnancy. Did you think that because they were such big topics that you as head writer, it was important for you to be the one who was writing that?
It was a decision. I wanted to write them.
Okay.
And the producer at the time, Dulcie Singer, who, by the way, is one of the most wonderful people who ever lived.
Okay.
She was a great, great executive producer. She made us all feel respected. She went to bat for us. She had the best. She had a great eye. She had great taste, and she had confidence in me. So I wrote it. Yeah.
Nice. Was it your idea to have Maria and Luis start a relationship?
No, that was a group decision.
Okay. So most of these episodes that I mentioned were all group based.
Yeah. Everything that's big was group decision involving research and production. The executive producer. Sometimes the executives at the front, the head of the company,
okay,
would weigh in. In developing the projects, it was always a group effort with research and the producers, and I think all the writers weighed in at some point. You probably have heard about the Snuffy circumstance, which was, for those who don't know, Big Bird had this friend, Snuffleupagus, who was giant. He was like a short elephant.
Another good friend of mine who is on this podcast is actually Marty Robinson.
Oh, no kidding. Wow. You know everybody.
That's something that Chris Cerf had said to me because he was talking about Peter Linz, who's another person I'm very close friends with. We've met before. We met in LA, and
Oh,
we had emailed before then. I said, "Hi, I'm James Snopes," and he goes, "Nice to meet you." And his mouth drops because he just realizes who he's talking to, and he's like, "Wow, the James Snopes from Nova Scotia." And I told Chris that, and he's like, "Well, we all know you."
man, that's really something. What happened with that episode? If you want me to talk about it, I can.
Go ahead, of course.
Snuffy was this giant, almost prehistoric-looking creature with a big long trunk and a big long tail, but he called his trunk a snuffle. And Marty is brilliant. You know, Marty played Snuffleupagus and Telly. By the way, I think for me, Telly was one of my favorite characters.
I was wondering.
I loved Telly. He was such a dear character. You know that you know how he first started
As a telly monster, a literal telly monster. I
Yeah,
have that episode, and I just love to freak out my friends by sending them pictures of Telly, and I'll just say this is a robotic version of Telly, and they're like, "What the hell is that thing?" And I'm like, "That's Telly Monster when he was introduced."
yes, he was a television freak.
Right.
And I had been away from the show for a while, and I came back, and everybody, you know, they talked about the character and that they loved the look of the character and everything, but it wasn't quite working.
Mm. I just
I
can't imagine how many kids probably went that close to the TV, knowing probably thinking their eyes would turn into pinwheels.
Yeah, it was Sarah Compton, I think, who came up with the character, that first version of it. And when I watched him, it seemed to me that he was somebody who had intense emotion.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, maybe we should go, you know, with that he just feels things deeply, either one way or the other. And it could switch. And what ended up happening is you have this deeply emotional guy
Mm-hmm.
who will sympathize and empathize, but to a degree that, you know, it's just, you feel sorry for him. And oh no, you know, be like
Also known as me in high school.
yeah. And so he became great. He was great with Telly. I mean, with Elmo, and Marty. I just loved that character. Anyway, Snuffy, loved him too.
Mm-hmm.
That was John
How could
Stone.
you not? He's cute.
Yeah, John Stone's baby. Really, it was Snuffy.
Oh, so John created Snuffy?
I think my memory is
Okay.
that he, in connection with Jim, created that character. I think they did it before I came back to the show after I was away for a while.
Snuffy first came in 71.
He came in 71? Oh, well, then I was there.
Hmm.
Well, in any case, the idea that it just so happened that every time Big Bird wanted his friends to meet Snuffy, Snuffy would remember that he had to be somewhere and he wouldn't be where Big Bird wanted him to be, but he would meet somebody. And nobody believed Big Bird. They thought Snuffy was his imaginary friend. And we kept it ambiguous. We, even though we saw Big Bird with him, we didn't officially acknowledge, other than to having the grown-ups not believe him, one way or the other. Was he real or was he not real? But we started getting letters from people who are dealing with kids who have been abused, who tell stories to adults and are not believed because the stories are fantastic. And they said that to the degree to which Big Bird's inability to get grown-ups to believe him reinforces their feeling that grown-ups won't believe them, it might prevent them from telling somebody about what's going on if they're being abused. So the first step we took was to have Maria and I think Bob believe him.
Oh, I think I know the episode you're talking about. It was Maria, Gordon, and Linda.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, that was one of my favorites.
Yeah. And what we felt was at least then Big Bird has some adults believing him. And we thought, well, we'll have some fun with those adults believing him, and the other adults go, you believe him? Well, yeah, it's Big Bird. If he believes it, if he says it's true, we believe him.
I still remember Big Bird's statement, in my 6 years on the planet, you don't think I know the difference between what's real and what's imaginary? Like that is a deep cut right there. Well, that was very well said.
Well, I guess I wrote that.
That was very well done. That was a very good quote.
Was that when they finally saw him, or was that the Maria and Luis?
That was the one where they started to believe, okay.
Oh, okay.
And even Gordon had said, I do believe that you know the difference. And when Linda had believed it, Bob's like, you got to be crazy. I can't believe it. I've never seen a Snuffleupagus. And Big Bird says, well, I've never seen your aunt, and I believe she's real. Ouch. I don't know whether or not
you know something. I got to say something. You are amazing.
Thank you.
That you remember all this stuff. I have to say, sometimes I've asked kids who watched the show, would you like? Oh, I loved Sesame Street. I really loved it. Do you have anything that you remember in particular? And usually they say no.
Oh, yeah. The same happens to me for people my age. They're like, oh, I only just remember the character names. I don't remember any segments.
Yes. And so it's incredibly gratifying to me to have you remember so much.
Well, thank you very much.
Not just my things that I've done, but I know that the other writers certainly would feel the same way, and everybody on the show would feel the same way.
Well, thank you very much for that.
Yeah. It's heartfelt. Anyway, then the time came when we said, okay, let's bite the bullet. But that was more for, I think, a creative reason, because we had reached a point with some adults believing him, I think, that we addressed the initial problem in a significant way. But we felt that that the whole idea had run its course. And some people were worried, well, you're going to lose this, wonderful sort of recurring gag that you have, this running joke. And we said, yeah, but it was time, and maybe we'll get something else. And I think we did. Because then you had Snuffy having relationships with the other people on the set, and all that interaction that you then have that you couldn't have before. So it opened up a new world for us. And I think there's a lesson in that for anybody who, it's got this great idea and they're sticking with it. But you got to put down the ducky sometimes.
Yeah, you got to put down the ducky if you want to play the saxophone.
Yeah.
I could not resist doing that just this once.
By the way, I don't know if you, I've said this before in other interviews. I had looked up Put Down the Ducky online, and I forget what the school was, but there was a college that was giving a course.
Oh, really?
In change and how difficult change can be.
Mm-hmm.
And it was called Put Down the Ducky.
Oh, that's clever.
And they would, what is it that you have, in order to make changes, what is it you have to set aside personally in a particular situation or whatever it is to be able to do something that you want to do without that silly squeak getting in your way.
Funny.
So that was really interesting to me that somebody would even.
That's clever. I guess it works then.
I guess. And they would, the professor supposedly played the song at the beginning of the class or something.
That's definitely some good motivation there.
Yeah.
As I mentioned, you had written an episode where Maria announced her pregnancy, and that episode.
I remember that.
Well, let's see if you remember this. We were talking earlier about characters that didn't work. This is a good example of that. But in the episode, basically, Big Bird, Maria was going to be taking Big Bird to the park, and she's like, "I'm sorry, I can't." And he was really irritated by that, like how a child would react to that, basically. Yeah. And Maria's like, "Look, I have to make phone calls. I have to fix a toaster," and Maria suggests, why don't you maybe write a story? So Big Bird wrote this story, and it was a character that was used more than once. It was a superhero character, Bluebird.
Oh, yes.
I have always heard that character didn't work.
It didn't work. Yes. I don't remember why, but it didn't work. But there's now a controversy about a Bluebird.
Oh, is there?
Yes.
Oh.
There's an artist. He's from South America. I'm not sure where.
Oh, I think is it the blue Big Bird sculpture in New York? I saw it on Facebook.
On top of the Metropolitan Museum of Art.
Right.
And he did this. He created a blue bird. Now, what people don't realize that in his country, the street character was a blue bird.
Oh, yeah, in the Dutch version of Sesame Street, there was a blue Big Bird. Pino.
You are just incredible. The information you have. I think there should be they should establish the title of official historian.
If anyone from Sesame Street that I've talked to before is listening, can you vouch for that for me? Can we make that a thing?
Yes, we can make. Now, Joe Hennish would probably, Joe Hennish Stuffed Pigs.
Yep, he was on here for a bonus video, him and Ryan.
Yeah, right. Well, he would want to dispute that, but I would guarantee that you could beat him in a Sesame trivia contest, hands down.
Hi, Joe, if you're listening.
As a matter of fact, I think you could probably beat a computer program.
Worth a shot.
Yeah.
But what I had heard with this, this is probably going to crack you up, the information I have about this.
Yeah.
I had always heard that the reason that the Bluebird character didn't work was for a couple of reasons. There were two bits. One was in that episode where he was trying to stop the toaster fixer telephone caller, which was Maria in a disguise in Big Bird's story. And the other one was where he was trying to stop the sock snatcher. And what I had heard was that the character didn't work because you have another humongous full-bodied bird character on Sesame Street. Apparently, Carol Spinney was not happy about that.
Oh, that could be. You know who would know that is if you ever talk to Dulcie Singer.
And apparently the other reason that it didn't work was because it was just like the original Marvel DC cartoons, and they had the effects, bam, pow, thwack, stuff like that.
Right.
Apparently the producers didn't really oppose of that superhero violence stuff, and the bits were becoming expensive to produce. I remember watching the toaster telephone caller one, and there's toasters and telephones all over Central Park, and I'm like, how do they make those? Are some of those real or some of them fake?
You know something? I just put it out of my head. I completely forgot all about it.
Well,
I knew I had done that, but I didn't remember the details that you just brought up.
Well, there was one episode that that you had written that was a parody of The Music Man, and it featured a rabbit, Preston, who had this habit of giving presents to everyone, and they had a song 17 ice cream cones, something like that, instead of 76 trombones like the big parade.
Jeez, I'm so glad you're telling me about things I've done because I have no memory of them.
I remember, do you know John Tartaglia?
Sure.
John Tartaglia once said to me, "You know my career better than I do."
Yeah, you certainly do.
Seems like it. So I guess I can forget about the Music Man parody question.
Yeah.
Something I did want to ask you about, though, and a couple of regular listeners were kind of wondering a few things about your partnership with a friend of mine, Chris Cerf.
Sure, sure.
And of course, as I mentioned in the intro, a lot of the songs for Sesame Street you two co-wrote.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing Chris always pointed out is that usually it was always supposed to sound like a parody, which is something I never really would have thought of.
Often that was the case. That was a
Yeah.
big deal. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, like I'm horrible at writing song lyrics, but if you ask me to do a parody of a Backstreet Boys song, I could probably do it to the tune of "I Want It That Way" or "Quit Playing Games with My Heart" or something like that.
Right.
So yeah, that's the best I got at song lyrics. But when you guys were given the task to write a song about something, because I know it was always supposed to teach something, but was there ever talk about what kind of sound that you wanted it to sound like? Like, let's do a parody of this.
You know something? Often the parody would generate what we taught.
Okay.
So a simple example is when Chris did, and he wrote this himself, Letter B.
Oh.
It's instead of Let It Be.
Mm-hmm.
So just Chris's mind, he hears Let It Be. There's a B, letter B, and now he's off and running. Born to Add.
Yes.
Yeah. That was just Chris finding a curriculum. That's I don't know if Chris said this to you, but we often said if there was no curriculum, we could not have written.
Right. Yeah. Because he was mentioning a song that he wrote. The Word Is No. Do you know of that one?
Yep.
Yeah. He said that basically he wanted to do a song styled by one of the best retro pop bands ever, the Cars, but he didn't know what they were going to teach. So he had to think, okay, what are we going to teach? So he wrote the music for that before the lyrics.
Right. But he knew the style, and then he was looking and he said no, and then no, and that's also in keeping with their lyrics anyway. That kind of admonition.
Yeah, he described it as one of the sight words as well.
Right,
and he said the same for telephone rock.
Right. Well, that one, yeah, that one I kind of wrote most of that lyric, I think, myself.
Okay.
I think. Okay. It was an early one, and at that time I was trying to write lyrics, and I would give them to him, and I would give him the lyric like, "Oh, here, Chris, if you think you like it." I was afraid of him.
Oh wow!
Because he was so talented. He's so talented. I just, my God, and I had not written lyrics before. It was just it was a whole new thing for me. So that one, the whole idea of that was the sight word. Yes.
Yeah, because he had said basically that if kids get lost anywhere, they'll, well, of course, probably not now because you have the wonderful invention of the iPhone, and I've got mine right here.
Yeah.
So, he had said that now that song is completely obsolete because now if you get lost, you can just pull out your phone. Like I walk every day. And like I live in a very open neighborhood. Like there's a lot of places I can walk to. And I recently took this new trail that I used to take with my friends when we would do like school walks. And we would have someone leading us. And so I decided I was going to walk that alone. But then I was like, what direction did we come out of? Because I remember where we came out of. I just don't know where the heck it is. And so I had to use the GPS on my phone. Now I'm able to actually walk that path without the GPS.
Yes, right. But there's no question. I think various parts of our brains are atrophying because of technology, and who knows what's going to pick up. But a sense of direction is no longer necessary.
Right. That's a good point. Well,
But the other site where it was Exit,
I love that song.
That one was one of the first I did, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And it features Chris on the piano.
Yeah, with that little Chrissy Muppet.
Little Chrissy.
I told Chris and I told Marty this recently. I can't help but compare Little Chrissy to Little Richard. Like,
oh, sure.
Like, yeah, like my grandmother and my dad, the same grandmother that passed away recently, they used to play for me the old Little Richard records. And being a dyed-in-the-wool Muppet watcher, I always used to picture Little Chrissy destroying the heck out of a piano. Like,
I don't think he would dispute that.
He agrees.
The whole style is retro, and and he's at the piano, of course. It's that kind of screaming
and breaking it.
And breaking it, yeah. Speaking of pianos, you remember what was his name?
Don Music.
Don Music.
That's another character that they just brought back.
Did they bring back Don Music?
Yeah, he was in the recent 50th anniversary special, and I don't know if you saw it, but Joseph Gordon-Levitt walks by Don Music, who's now played by Ryan Dillon, who does Elmo, and he's like, "Hey, Guy Smiley, no, I'm Don Music. Oh, you'll never get it, never."
Well, they probably eliminated the thing that made him persona non grata on Sesame Street,
which is banging his head on the piano.
Banging his head on the piano.
It's funny, but I had heard that. But what I had heard was that
kids will imitate it.
Yeah, Marty Robinson told me that they got this letter from a parent saying, "Hey, my kid's got piano key marks all over its forehead."
The writer of that was David Core.
Oh, cool.
He wrote that and created that character. And I just love that character.
He was funny, but he was very destructive.
Right. And I also loved the whole conceit, that he was trying to write all these nursery rhymes, and he got them all wrong.
Did anyone ever tell him that they exist?
He lived alone.
Oh, God. Oh man, now I feel bad for him.
He didn't get out much, He was a very dedicated musician. But the thing about that one was the kids will be ahead of him.
Oh, okay, that's clever.
And that's one of the things he always tried to do, was try to have some kids always a little bit, if Big Bird didn't know something, well, maybe some of the kids will be even ahead of him.
I think that was the case. I think that was the case for characters like Sherlock Hemlock and Simon Soundman as well, because for Sherlock, he was a bit of a clueless detective who's like, okay, we have this clue, but I don't know what it connects to, but yet the answer was right in front of them.
Right in front of him.
Simon Soundman, you have the fact that he's like a very popular example is, yes, I would like a. And for anyone who doesn't know what the heck it was I was just doing, I was trying to imitate a saw, but that was not a very good impression of a saw. But that was so that the kid could understand what sound it was that Simon was making.
Right. Yeah.
Since we're talking about the music of Sesame Street, we were talking a little bit about in the intro about one of my dearest friends, Ivy Austin, and every time I ask someone at Sesame Street, "Hey, do you know who Ivy Austin is?" If they do, the answer I always get is, "Yeah, that's Danny Epstein's daughter." And so because of that, I've heard a lot of Danny Epstein stories and memories. So I wonder, do you have any Danny Epstein stories that you'd like to share?
I don't have anything in specifics, but Danny, Sesame Street's beginnings, everybody bought into the whole idea of what we were doing. And Danny just loved what he was doing, and he was, he got to play drums because he played drums in the band, but he also organized all the music and all the sessions. And this was before computers. So this was all sort of manual labor. to try to make sure that all the sessions were done properly and all the music was cataloged properly and the cue sheets and everything. But he always had a smile. He always had a smile, and I always loved seeing him. He was a great guy. I loved him.
That's lovely. Yeah, I've heard that he was a very sweet man.
Oh, he was the best. He was the best. Also, Dave Connor. You know that name, right?
Mm-hmm. He's another one of the great composers of Sesame Street.
Yeah, and arrangers. I mean, he arranged everything.
Oh, really? That I didn't know.
Oh, yeah. He arranged Put Down the Duckie. He arranged almost every song. And he would work with every session, every recording session, if one of the puppeteers or human characters was recording, he would work with them.
Yeah, he was the vocal coach.
The vocal coach. Yeah. He would get them to I mean, he was great. What a talented guy. And so unassuming. Everybody, I think everybody was humble, which is another thing that made Sesame Street so great. There weren't any, huge egos interfering and trying to make points for themselves or whatever. Everybody really worked together and was humble about their talents. And there were some really talented people. Boy, oh boy.
Absolutely. I recently did a chat with Sesame Street's current vocal coach, Paul Rudolph.
Oh,
and his wife, Leslie Carrera Rudolph, who plays Abby. Yeah. He got us introduced, and then I chatted with Leslie not too long after.
Yeah, right.
Speaking of new additions to Sesame Street, I say new additions because I'm old enough to remember Abby's first episode.
Oh, and, that's Tony Geis.
Right. So can you you were working on the show when they expanded their set and went around the corner?
Yes, the infamous Around the Corner.
Mm-hmm. Was that another one of those group decisions?
This was a decision. Remember, I said, "What do the kids need?" was the driving force behind everything on Sesame Street.
Mm-hmm.
Going around the corner was not.
I see.
Going around the corner was a decision based on trying to get better ratings.
Oh.
It was trying to do something different, big different. And we had a couple of seminars about what we could do. And I don't remember whose idea it was to go around the corner.
Mm-hmm.
But one in particular, one idea came out of it that ended up having another life was the Furry Arms. Which ended up being the Furchester Hotel, which Belinda Ward wrote.
Oh yeah, the show in England.
Yeah, right.
It's a great show. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, Belinda's a really, really great writer.
Yeah. What I had heard about. Oh, I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. Listen, we did the best we could. Mm-hmm. It ended up. It was a very expensive undertaking.
Yeah, I had always heard that it had confused kids because of all these new characters and these new additions.
Yeah, I think that's probably true. Listen, when Sesame Street first started, remember, there was Big Bird and Oscar on the street.
Right.
Once in a while, when Jim Henson and Frank Oz were available, we would get some of their characters on the street, but that was only a couple of weeks out of a year. And as time went on, we felt, well, we could use some more life. And so other characters were added, and but at a certain point, you really need focus. And so I think that it just didn't work. It was too much. I'm looking at just something. Where is it? Oh, let me see if That's not it. That's not it. There was a book that Lou Berger and I wrote.
Was it the one Around the Corner on Sesame Street?
Yes.
I had it.
I was just looking for it.
I had it when I was younger.
Oh, did you?
And that was also illustrated by Joe Matthew as well.
Yes. Yeah, it was. It was.
And before I'm nearly finished up the Q&A, and then I'm going to get into some fan questions. Some people have actually sent some fan questions. So before I get into that, let's move on a little bit from Sesame Street and talk about Between the Lions, which you had co-created alongside of Chris and Lou and Kathy Mullen, Michael Frith.
Right.
And of course, I used to watch that show and kind of still am now. Can you talk? I never grew up. When I was younger, I watched a lot more TV than was probably healthy. And here we are now in the Nova Scotia lockdown. So
yes,
I kind of have no other options. I make myself sound like I'm lazy. But anyway, can you talk a little bit about Between the Lions?
Oh, well, when Chris and I, he probably told you this story too. We used to, on weekends or a couple of times a week, we would go to a club, a bar, restaurant called Elaine's.
I don't think I've ever heard that one.
Oh, well, Elaine's was a huge show business and literary hangout for authors and publishers and producers and everything. It was on 88th Street and 2nd Avenue in Manhattan. Mm-hmm. And for at least 10 years, it was the place for celebrities to go to hang out.
Is it still open?
No.
But I was going to say, next time I go to New York, I'll have to check it out. But I was like, wait, this is years ago that you're going back.
No. But you can Google it. And there may have even been a book written about it. I'm not sure.
I'll have to check that out.
But when I say everybody went there, I mean it. Mm-hmm. And Chris, whose father started Random House,
Bennett Cerf,
would go there a lot. And when I started hanging out with Chris, I would go there with him. Mm-hmm. And we would have some vodka, and we would talk and laugh and whatever it is. And every once in a while we'd say, we should do the next Sesame Street afterward.
Oh my God.
We would get drunk and talk about doing another show. Mm-hmm. And the show that would be a follow-on to Sesame Street.
Yeah, that's how Chris described it, as those who have graduated from Sesame Street.
Right. And Chris in particular, and his mother and his father, his mother having worked with Dr. Seuss, Chris knew Ted, and reading was a big thing for him, beginning reading. And so one day we were at Elaine's one night, and we said, we came back to the subject, but now we said it more seriously. Maybe it was before we had a martini, I don't know. And we said, well, let's do some teaching reading. And but always with a show, you want to know, well, where is it set? What kind of a place do you want to set it? And we said, well, a library. And we said, yeah, but for a lot of people, libraries are boring. So we said, well,
I don't think libraries are boring.
But a lot of people, that's the case. How can you set a show in a place like that? At least that's what we were saying. And then we said, well, yeah, we'll make it interesting. We set it, and we thought about the New York Public Library, and other libraries have lions in front. And we said, maybe it's a library that's run by lions. So, and then Chris said, it's called Between the Lions.
So that was Chris's idea, the name.
Oh yeah.
Wow.
If it's a pun, it's going to be Chris's idea. He is he is the best at doing that kind of thing ever.
And yet you were the one who created Harvey Kneeslapper.
Well, yeah, but come on. You can't be Between the Lions. Come on.
Well, yes, that's clever than most of Harvey Kneeslapper's jokes. They were all just letter or number related.
Yeah, right.
Between the Lions, like I often because I have quite a few connections with that show. You and Chris and Noel McNeil, Cheryl Blaylock, Sarah Durkee, and I'll tell them that I talked to you guys, and I'll say to my friends, do you remember a show called Between the Lions? And they're like, what? What? No. What's it called? And so I'll just say, Between the Lines, and I'm like, no, lions.
Yeah, right.
the animal lions, Between the Lions, and they don't get it.
No. It was an interesting ride, that working on that show. The beginning was great, working with Lou and Kathy and Michael, putting it all together. And what happened was we decided, we had a germ of an idea that we wanted to do this, and we thought, well, we'll go to WGBH. We didn't want to do it at the workshop. We wanted to be independent of the workshop because of what was going on at that point in management, and we just didn't feel we'd get the right shake.
Okay.
At the time, and so we thought we'd go independent with it, and we partnered with WGBH, and it just so happened that Department of Education had a $5 million RFP, request for proposals, for a new children's program, and but the specs in the RFP, we didn't match those specs. So, but they liked what we submitted, and we got to give WGBH credit. They wrote the proposal. That's something that takes a very specific kind of expertise. We worked on the creative part of it, but they really put this proposal together. And so since we didn't meet the specs, they doubled the grant, and they gave us one, and they gave another show $5 million, and that started us. Mm-hmm. And that's how we got going. It was an expensive show to do,
I bet.
And what happened was we sold licenses for toys in order to pay for the show.
Ooh.
What they do when you do that kind of thing for toys and all that sort of stuff, when you license merchandise like that, they give you an advance. And so the advance money was used to produce the first 2 seasons. Mm-hmm. After the first 2 seasons, the advance money was gone.
Ouch.
Yeah. So WGBH had to scramble. We all had to scramble, trying to find money. We had to reduce the number of episodes from a substantial number. I think we did 55 the first season and 40 the second. And then there was a drastic drop. Eventually, I think it was Chris who made contact somehow with Mississippi Broadcasting. Mm-hmm. And they contacted, they had a foundation, I forget the name of it now, that was willing to fund further production if we did it down in Mississippi.
That's what Noel McNeil had mentioned. He kind of forgot where it was, but
it was in Jackson, Mississippi.
Yeah. What was it like to film there?
Huh?
So what was it like to film in Mississippi?
It was great. I really loved going down there. Met some wonderful people. It was something that, as big as this, that they'd never done. So there was a learning curve for them, but they took it on. They were great. All the people we worked with down there. And it was fun to go down there. We all stayed at a motel with cooking facilities. It had a pool.
Nice.
We hung out, Peter Lenz and what's her name? Oh, God.
Jen Barnhart.
Jen. Oh my God. I mean, all of those people. What's his name? Did the Fleas?
Oh God, Fleas.
Oh God, his name always slips my brain. Never mind. For now, Jim Crooper.
Oh, okay, cool.
Yeah, Jim Crooper, the master of puppet mechanisms.
And before I know we had talked about it before we started recording, but you, Chris, and Jim Crooper also worked on a show that was done here in Canada, Whimsy's House.
Yeah, I didn't know Jim worked on that.
Yeah, he was. I think he was puppeteering on it.
Right. We also worked on a short-lived show on PBS called Lomax, the Hound of Music.
Oh, I've heard of that show, but I've never actually seen it.
Oh, it's fun.
I was a little bit older when it premiered.
Yeah, it was fun. Lomax, the Hound of Music. It was Peter Lenz, Jim, Jim. Who played? Trying to remember who played the other pup. Oh my God! But it was a dog and a cat on a train traveling around the country to track down various American music, old American music. And it was a lot of music. It was had a curriculum that was developed by a guy named John Feyerabend from the Connecticut School of Music, and it was meant to teach how to get kids to participate in singing and moving in particular ways that would help their musical intelligence.
I see.
I think you might like it.
I'll check it out and I'll let you know what I think. So a couple of fan questions here.
Yep.
2 were sent to me from somebody named Vestin Bruno, and this kind of goes back to you and Chris doing songs for Sesame Street. Vestin wants to know how you guys wrote the songs Monster in the Mirror and one of my favorites, Doo-Wop Hop.
Well, Monster in the Mirror started like a lot of the songs. I probably wrote, is a Monster in the Mirror? I probably wrote something, wubba, 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 wubba,
Yes.
wubba, 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 and a doodly
doo. He went wubba, 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 and I sang along. Wubba, wubba, wubba is a monster song.
And I wish I could explain where that came from.
I do remember a very early skit with Bert and Ernie where Ernie was like, I'm scared, Bert, of monsters. Well, Grover and Harry and Cookie and all them, and they're monsters and you're not scared of them. No, I mean monsters who go wubba wubba. So maybe it came from that.
That's probably where I got it from.
Could be.
Yeah.
It was in the segment Here in the Middle of Imagination.
Oh.
It was a song that Joe Raposo had written.
Oh, okay. I just don't remember where that came from. I was probably sitting by myself, having dinner, again, drinking a martini.
So wubba 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 is just really drunk talk.
Probably just drunk talk.
The dark side of Sesame Street.
The dark side, yes, that we will never talk about again.
Yeah. What about for Doo-Wop Hop? How did you and Chris do that one?
God, I don't remember.
That was one that Kermit sang. But there's one thing I can do. And Ivy was doing the background vocals in that. Come on and do it too. Doo-wop, doo-wop, hop.
It was probably op. Did they have words on screen?
They didn't. But it sounds reasonable. Just the sound of op.
I'd have to see the lyric again. Often, again, there was another way that Chris and I, maybe we got an assignment and we would get together and we would toss ideas back and forth and work on a lyric. And Chris, I don't know if Chris ever showed you this. You know those composition books that are black and white? They're kind of black and they have
Like a
little white
notebook?
things on it. It says composition on it, and they're cardboard.
I know the
Have you
kind of
seen those?
I know the
Oh,
kind of book you're talking about.
Yeah.
I don't think Chris ever showed me one.
He's got hundreds of them.
Oh wow.
Hundreds. His whole life is in these composition books.
Oh, he could write a book one day and set it to music.
He glues two together, and he has one for every month.
Wow.
And it's every day what he's been doing and what he has planned, and he has business cards put into it and receipts, and everything he's ever done is in these composition books.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wow.
Monster in the Mirror. I couldn't be more informative on the songs.
Well, Monster in the Mirror and Put Down the Duckie both eventually had versions featuring celebrities doing the song. Do you have a favorite celebrity that you worked with on Sesame Street? Maybe even ones that came on those songs, but any at all? Because there have been several.
Oh, there's just so many. What my brain is not working today. What's her name? From Pretty Woman?
Julia Roberts?
Julia Roberts. I'm going to say she's my favorite, and I'll tell you why.
Okay.
When I was living in New York, she had yet to do Mystic Pizza, which was her first movie.
Okay.
She was 18 maybe. And I was at a bar. There was another hangout for celebrities, not Elaine's. And her brother was sitting inside, and I was in the bar area. And she said, I'm thinking I'm going to get out of show business. I said, and this was come on, what are you doing? I don't know. I don't know if I want to do this or whatever it is. I said, yes, of course you do. You're going to be fine.
And this was before her career started?
She may have just done Mystic Pizza or something like that.
Okay.
And right after that, her career takes off. So now, years later, we're going to do celebrity inserts in Los Angeles.
Mm-hmm.
And among the celebrity inserts are going to be some things with Grover. So Grover is there. And now I haven't seen her or whatever it is since that time I saw her in the bar. And she's in makeup because she's going to do something with Grover. Mm-hmm. And I walked in, I said, I don't know if you remember me as Norman. Oh, yeah. I said, are you happy you didn't give up show business? And she said, yes. Yeah, she was great. There were so many. I mean, geez, trying to think. Mandy Patinkin.
Oh, nice. I'm a fan of his.
Yeah.
And he ended up doing Adventures of Elmo and Grouchland. I don't know if you saw that.
No.
He was, it was a film featuring Elmo where he loses his blanket, which he basically is his favorite thing in the whole world. He loses it in Oscar's trash can because Oscar found it and sneezed into it. Gross.
Right.
Threw it into his trash can, and then they get sucked into a place called Grouchland. Mandy Patinkin plays this guy, Huxley, who's like, okay, so this here, I touched it. Mine. If Jodie Eichelberger by any chance is listening, Jodie, of course, played Stingy on Lazy Town and was also in that film. I'm noticing a massive similarity here.
It's great. Yeah, no, Mandy. I also did really like Mandy.
He was in because I saw the episode where he was a cop and
that's the one I wrote that.
Yeah, and Big Bird was having a hard time pronouncing his name, both last name and the name Officer.
Yeah.
He pronounced it Ossifer or Patinkin. It's like,
Oh, it's like Mr. Pooper.
Well,
He used to-
with Big Bird and Mr. Hooper, Snuffleupagus used to refer to Mr. Handford as Mr. Handfoot.
Handfoot. Oh,
Do you remember that?
I don't. But I know that Mandy did a thing with Barkley, the dog.
Right.
And Barkley was behind him.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
And he kept and Barkley he didn't know where Barkley was, and Barkley kept moving, so he was always behind him.
Mm-hmm.
That was the bit.
Mm-hmm. Another question from Veston is, can you talk about writing for videos, like home videos, such as he put down a few. One was the Put Down the Duckie special.
Oh yeah,
which was the All-Star
the
special.
Is that the one with Phil Donahue?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. Now that was kind of interesting because it was and it was even said on the cover, an all-star musical special. Phil Donahue, Patti LaBelle. I don't mind Patti LaBelle. Barbara Walters. Every celebrity that was on Put Down the Duckie. Okay, I love Paul Simon.
Yeah. And then my actual favorite thing in that was Cookie Monster being interviewed, and Kermit was his lawyer.
Was that the one with Robert McNeil?
Yes.
I was talking to Emily Kingsley about Robert McNeil recently because she wrote the episode where Robert and Kermit were reporting on Slimy landing on the moon. And I told her something kind of interesting. Robert McNeil was raised here in Halifax.
Oh, well, I think I knew he was a Canadian. Yeah.
He went to Dalhousie University.
Oh, uh-huh. Yeah, well, this was, there had just been hearings on Capitol Hill, the Iran-Contra hearings.
Oh.
So this was a parody of the Iran-Contra hearings.
Oh my God.
It's one of my favorite things. Because Cookie Monster refuses to answer questions, and I love it.
A couple other videos that Veston mentioned were Learning About Numbers, which was possibly best remembered as Big Bird's Number Show, where Big Bird was taking on like Johnny Carson, and the Count was his co-host. And the funny thing about that video is the honkers play a big part, and honker honks to Big Bird. Big Bird's like, the Count went home, but he's supposed to come back, and it's like, and the honkers can't talk, but he makes the suggestion of phoning him, and then it comes into this insert. Let me know if you wrote this one, but it was the insert where the Count gave Ernie a job helping him, and it's like, what do you want me to do? I want you to answer my telephone.
That's mine.
Okay, perfect.
Yeah. I use that one often to talk about character and teaching. Because
it was very clever to put that in the actual to put that in the video.
Yeah. That's one of my favorite pieces that I've written, because
it's one of my favorite pieces that you've written too. I didn't know you wrote it until now, but I still
I love, because just the whole notion of Ernie taking a job with the Count. It's one of the few times you see Ernie doing something with another puppet without Bert.
Yeah, I'm gonna be honest. When I saw that video, Learning About Numbers, when I was younger, I thought that was very bizarre that Ernie was without Bert. And I'm like 4 or 5 years old watching this.
Where's Bert?
Exactly. Yeah, that was my thoughts. And after the insert plays in the video, Big Bird's got the phone. And it's like, "Hi, Ernie. This is Big Bird. Is the Count there?"
Yeah.
So it's like that skit was just made for the video.
Yeah, right.
The other video that this person asked about was "I'm Glad I'm Me." Now that's one that I have. Oh my God, that took me a while to find off of eBay. But in that one, Maria was telling a story called "I'm Glad I'm Me," where Big Bird was playing a prince who was learning about what makes people or living objects, or living things. I shouldn't say objects. Living
You
things
know what? You know
special.
what I'm wondering. Some of these videos were compilations,
Right.
and unless there was a special thread that held those together that I wrote, then they weren't mine. In other words, what they would do from time to time is they would hire somebody on staff or whatever it is to write some kind of a continuity thing that would hold the video together, so it wasn't just all these videos.
Mm-hmm.
Got it? And I don't think I wrote the continuity on that one.
Okay.
Yeah.
Last fan question before we wrap up comes from comes from Robert Wallace, and we were just talking about one of your favorite segments from Sesame Street. Do you have? He wants to know, what was your favorite segment that you wrote? Would it be that one with the Count and Ernie, or are there?
Yeah. If I had to say, it was that one. Yeah.
Okay.
If there was one for me to pick out, it would be that one, and also a fishing cowboy hat I liked a lot.
Oh yeah, that was a good one.
Yeah, I like that one.
Yeah, I have the Ernie and Bert book which is basically a retelling of that.
Yes, it's a retelling, and I remember it was one of the first I wrote, fishing cowboy hat, and I remember where I was when I wrote it. And I remember having this, kind of, sometimes when you write, you have this wonderful moment when you actually surprise yourself with something you came up with. It seems to come from who knows where. And when this came together, one of the things that Jeff Moss used to talk about all the time when he hired us, what's the tag? How does it end? Does it begins here, but does it have an ending? What's the last line? Does the last line seem to come out of everything that came before and button it? We used to call it the button or the tag. And this one really holds together for me because it starts with, Ernie, why do you want me to put this pot on my head? Oh, Bert, because I broke the cookie jar. Oh no, what did you do with the cookie?
What's that got to do with the pot?
But then he goes, what'd you do with the cookies? Oh, I put the cookies in the milk bottle, Bert. What'd you do with the milk? I put the milk in, and it ends up he put whatever it is in the fishbowl, in his cowboy hat. And he says, well, what am I going to play for cowboy? And they back with the pot. Right
him, cowboy, Bert.
Right.
Yeah, that is a funny skit. I will be honest. He could have said, I broke a couple of things and I had to put them somewhere, rather than just.
Yes, but you wouldn't have taught. You wouldn't have taught what we wanted to teach.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
And what we're teaching is divergent uses of an object.
Okay. Wow. That's clever. I never would have thought of that.
And if you think about it, it's the essence of creativity.
Yeah, it really is.
Finding another way of looking at something and using something in a different way.
Well, that wraps up this show. Norman, is there anything else you'd like to say before we finish?
No, thank you very much, and I'm honored to know you.
Oh, wow. Thank you very much. And I should also give a little shout out to Chris as well, because it was Chris Cerf that got me in touch with Norman.
Okay.
After I had been talking to Chris, he one of the questions I asked him was, what was your favorite Little Chrissy song? He's like, I have no idea. He never thought about it. And then he asked me, what's yours? And I was like, oh, crap. What do I say? One that came to mind was You're Alive. And then he said that was co-written by Norm Stiles, who became the head writer of Sesame Street. And I was like, head writer. That sounds like he would have a very storied life, a lot to talk about. So I think we have had a lot to talk about
Yes,
for
I think
quite a
so.
while. Norman, thank you again for taking the
Thank
time to
you.
come to Nostalgia Talk.
Thanks a lot. And remind me, who was I going to send you? Lou Berger.
Yeah.
Okay. I'll send
All
it
right.
to you.
Thank you. And to the listeners, peace.
Peace.